Well, good morning, everyone. It's Tuesday, and this is a new edition of Inspiration for Today, and you are here. I'm so glad you are. This week, we're looking at some of life's most important questions. And the Bible deals a lot with that, doesn't it? But we're going to look at it, we are looking at it in a different lens this week by comparing two people from complete opposite of the spectrum, Job and King Solomon. And yesterday we kind of talked in some generalities and set the stage. Today we're going to dig into Job, who he was, what happened to him, and his outlook on life. We're going to do the same tomorrow with King Solomon, in kind of a unique way too. But then Thursday we're going to try to tie them all together, because the conclusions that they come up with from completely different perspectives, I think, are inspirational for us and challenging. See which one you relate to more. So, who is Job? Well, Job lived in the days of like Abraham, and we call them the patriarchs, the very founders of the faith, really of the Jewish faith. But just a interesting guy. And Job is a book in the Bible, right before Psalms, so it's always easy to find. And let's just read some of those verses, okay? In Job 1, he says, and this is who Job is: "In the land of Uz, there lived a man whose name was Job. This man was blameless and upright. He feared God and he shunned evil." Well, that's something we can relate to, isn't it? We fear God, respect God, honor him, make him king in our life, and that's what Job did. He didn't want to do evil. He shunned it. You and I, we don't want to do evil. We shun it. He had 7 sons and 3 daughters, and he owned 7,000 sheep and 3,000 camels, 500 oxen, 500 donkeys, and a large number of servants. We might call employees now. But, so he was wealthy. He truly was a wealthy man. Things looked good, didn't they? Well, if you know the story, and I'm not going to read through it, but actually, this is a discussion between Satan and God. And Satan makes the case that Job is this type of godly man only because he is so blessed and he's so wealthy, and he wouldn't follow God if God took these things away. And God actually allows Satan to cause stress and evil, really, harm to Job. And he does it to show Satan how Job would respond. And you probably know the story somewhat, but they argue back and forth. And so, first of all, Satan convinces God to let him take away all of Job's riches and blessings, really. Verse 13, "One day when Job's sons and daughters were feasting and drinking of the wine at the older brother's house, a messenger from Job said, 'The oxen were plowing and the donkeys were grazing, and the Sabaeans attacked and carried them off. They put the servants to the sword, and I am the only one who has escaped to tell you.'" So the first thing that Satan does to Job is that he takes away his donkeys, which doesn't seem that big to us, but it was a measure of wealth in those days. And then that happens again and again. The next paragraph, he takes away the sheep. The sheep. And the next paragraph, the Chaldeans formed 3 raiding parties, swept down on your camels and carried them off. And they put the servants to the sword. So it was a very, very bad day for Job. He's losing all his wealth. And it got worse. It got worse. And it's one thing to lose your wealth, But in verse 18, your sons and daughters were feasting and drinking wine at the oldest brother's house when suddenly a mighty wind swept in from the desert and struck the four corners of the house. It collapsed on them, and they are all dead. Now that's something I know you and I can relate to, how horrible it would be if all our children, grandchildren died at the same time. And by now, Job's grief must be phenomenal. He's losing everything he had. In fact, verse 20, at this, Job got up and tore his robe and shaved his head. Then he fell down to the ground and worshipped. And he said, naked I came into my mother's womb, and naked I will depart. Job's attitude, well, then he says, the Lord gave and the Lord has taken away. May the name of the Lord be praised. So Job starts to immediately show his response to God and these things that God did allow to happen to him. But that in itself does not change the way that he responded to the Lord. So that was Job's first test. I mean, it was a mighty, horrible test, wasn't it? But there's a second test. Because Satan comes back to God and he says, yeah, okay, God, Job remained faithful during that, but he still has his health. And so then we go into chapter 2, and just to paraphrase, God allows Satan to strike Job's body with tremendously painful sores. Ouch. It hurts even thinking about it. It says, verse 7, so Satan went out from the presence and afflicted Job with painful sores from the soles of his feet to the top of his head. And then Job took a piece of broken pottery and scraped himself as he sat among the ashes. It's hard to picture, isn't it? He's lost everything, including all his family. He's now lost his health. It hurts. Actually, these are things that in our mind we can imagine. We deal with some of these things. Certainly the pains of life and the pains of our body, they're real. They're real. They're real to us too. So, is Job a person we can relate to? At least we can, in our imagination, we can think how some of those things have happened to us. Most have not. Most of us have not lost all our wealth at once, although I've been, down to very little twice in my life. He finally then, it gets even worse. His wife says to him, are you still holding on to your integrity? Curse God and die. So even his wife is turning on Job. It just can't get any worse. So how does he respond? This is the challenge that we have today. We can respond to bad things that happen in our life this way. Verse 10, you are talking like a foolish woman. Shall we accept good from God and not trouble? And in all this, Job did not sin in what he said. So no matter what happened, Job stayed faithful to God. I find his life very, very challenging. Well, tomorrow we're going to look at the life of King Solomon. It's literally the opposite in almost every way. And let's see how he responds. So don't miss tomorrow. See you then. Bye for now.
Where does this leave us?
Well, it leaves Job in a place of humility. He never learned why he suffered, and yet he's able to live in peace and in the fear of the Lord. What we do know is that Job is now the kind of person who, no matter what comes, good or bad, he can trust God's wisdom.